Welcome back to the Hoops Temple podcast. Y'all know me, Nathan Schwartz. Joining me from New Zealand, Dylan Williamson. Dylan, how's it going?
Good morning, Nathan. Doing good.
Doing good. We are both rocking our wonderful thrift store finds. And I don't understand how you can get such good thrift store stuff in New Zealand. I'm jealous.
It's enormous perseverance. That's all it is. So I go to like five stores every week, and then once every 3 months I find a Golden State Warriors vintage logo $5 cap.
Still, the ability to find Golden State stuff in New Zealand, and I can't even find like an off-brand Draymond thing in East Lansing. Come on.
Yeah,
it's not fair.
My two like most obscure ones were probably because I've got like some like fairly common stuff. Like I got like a Spurs Kawhi t-shirt. I've got a nice like Nuggets long sleeve tee, which is quite fresh. It's a youth extra large, but luckily I'm so skinny that I can squeeze into it. But the two most obscure ones that I've got were jerseys that I found. It was a Hedo Turkoglu Raptors. You'll know these because I've shown them to you many times. But
yeah.
Hedo Turkoglu Raptors. Like to find that in New Zealand, he played like one season there and was like a bench player. Someone in New Zealand went out of their way to get a Hedo Turkoglu Raptors jersey, and then the other one is the Birdman Nuggets jersey. That one's maybe a little more popular, but still, like there are no stores that are selling Chris Anderson Nugget jersey. Someone had to like probably bring that in from somewhere to get a Birdman Nuggets jersey.
Dude, I found this guy selling a bunch of just like random NBA jerseys in my local area. And it was like a Patrick Ewing Team USA #6 jersey. It was, you got Rip Hamilton and Chauncey Billups Pistons jerseys, but also a Jonas Jerebko Pistons jersey. I was like kind of tempted, but he also has like random like a Toon Squad jersey and like off-brand, other jerseys mixed in there and jacked up the price for him. Like, all right, I'm not gonna buy it. If you start selling these individually, I'll pay you decent money for them, but I'm not gonna pay you for all this extra junk.
Yeah, I went to this one store in Auckland. It was one of those ones where they like really jack up the price on like vintage stuff, and they were selling vintage Clippers shirt. It was just like a Blake Griffin shirt from like 2012. They're like, yeah, this is $50. It's like I know for sure that I bought that like 5 years ago for $30. Like that's absurd. It's not so old that it's like increased in value. It's at the awkward spot where it's still depreciated. Like I'll pay $50 for a $30 Blake Griffin shirt from 2012.
I'm surprised you didn't jump on it. I mean, I guess if you already have the shirt, but
I know how much it costed because I had a Kobe one. That I bought new. It was like $30.
Fair. Well, Clippers did have something exciting happen. Kawhi Leonard has returned to the court. You guys have added a competent player to your surprisingly competent squad here. What are the Clippers at standings wise as we record this? I guess you're at 7th, but you're 20-15. That would be the 5th in the East above Milwaukee. And you're
a half game out of
4th. Yeah. Dylan, what'd you make of the Kawhi return?
Certainly a bit of rust. He didn't shoot well. He was, obviously working his way back in. But the important thing is just like what this does for the Clippers season. Coming into this year, there were certainly a lot of doubters. People projecting the Clippers as this sort of low play-in team. We've got this awkward thing in the West where there are like 12 teams that are trying to make the playoffs, but obviously not all of them can. And a lot of people had the Clippers as the one that would be on the outside looking in, even before Kawhi was, announced to miss the first couple months of the season. And so this could be the thing that propels the Clippers back into that top 4 territory. All season long, we've been able to get by on defense, and James Harden just like elevating us from the absolute worst offense in the league to one of the worst offenses in the league. But the defense has been enough to get by. But now Kawhi's back. which does two things. Firstly, it's another go-to scorer that can hopefully get the offense from terrible, maybe even up to mediocre, and then we're cooking. But the other thing that it does is we always talk about with injuries, not only do you get the difficulty of replacing that player in the rotation, but then also replacing the player that was the replacement in the rotation, and you go deeper into these guys that aren't really playable. If we can get fewer minutes for, maybe it's Kevin Porter gets his minutes cut, or Terrence Mann, who I was a big fan of. I am still a big fan of, but is having a rough season offensively. If some of those minutes cut these negative players that are actively, losing points every game, those now go to Kawhi Leonard instead. Like that's a huge turnaround. And so this could be the thing that propels the Clippers back into top 4. And in a season like this where it's fairly open, like the championship favorites, there's like the Celtics who, had one of the weakest runs to a championship through their conference last year. There's maybe still questions around them. Then there's the Thunder who haven't done much in the playoffs and, have on the back of a very young player. And typically the common knowledge of teams like this is that like you don't get there on your first go through. You've got to, play through some stuff. And then other than that, like there's no real, there's the Cavs who are looking very much 2015 Hawks, one of these teams who are like, yep, you're very good in the regular season and no one is going to believe in them when it comes to the playoffs. And so it is kind of an open field. And so a team that's top 5 on defense, adding a player who, if he's healthy and playing at his at the caliber that he's shown he's capable of, which isn't maybe reasonable to expect, but is a top 5 kind of player. Maybe this is
80% of his caliber is still really good.
Yeah. Like maybe this is one of those fabled sort of breakthrough seasons. If a man can dream.
It's good for men to have dreams. I think society pushes men down too much and says, just go work your 9 to 5. Don't hope for anything better. Just struggle to survive, pay bills.
Don't hope for a championship.
Yeah, so I'm willing to encourage you. I do want to just get a couple words in on Cleveland. I'm starting to believe. I forget who did the article, but someone pointed out that they're at a 72 win pace right now through 34 games, which is just insane. One of the things that we're going to do in this episode is we're going to talk trades and what trades that they can make. They have a little bit of assets there, but I was like, what do they even need? They're a very complete team, and I know they're somewhat untested in the playoffs. Donovan Mitchell has had good runs in the past, but the rest of the team has folded in the playoffs previously. So it may be too much too soon. And maybe next year's when they're really truly title contenders, but I'm a little bit scared of them. I don't think Milwaukee should say, hey, let's try to play Cleveland, or anyone's going to want to be in that 4-5 matchup and have to see Cleveland. Like, I'd be fighting to get into that 2-3, and I'll take my chances with Boston over Cleveland at this point.
Damn. I think probably one of the, if we're going to talk about a little Cleveland playoff projection, I think one of the biggest issues that they've got is in recent years, playoff success has been predicated a lot on the diverse ways in which you can win. Obviously, there's also the other team's best player gets hurt, and that maybe doesn't test you. But in a legitimate series, playoffs are a lot about when the other team has time to take away the way that you succeed best. How else can you succeed? And if there's one knock that I could levy against the Cavs, it's maybe that there's a lack of diversity in play style.
Dylan, they got a one big lineup, but they got a 2 big lineup. What more do you want?
What more do you need? They can run pick and rolls, or they can run pick and roll from the other side of the floor.
They have their 2 point guard lineup and their 1 point guard lineup. They have lineups with like 1 added shooter that's a non-ball handler, and they have lineups with 3 added shooters that are non-ball handlers. Like, That's diversity in today's
Mm,
day and age. Uh, we didn't plan to talk Cavs, but I want to circle back to the Clippers because you
yeah.
mentioned some of the Kawhi rust. Yeah, his shot looked a little bit rushed and weird in the first half. He did hit that first three. I thought he made a really nice cut, but I think the second quarter he cuts to the basket, gets the ball, and immediately, like in air, turns and kicks it to the corner, or for a Norman Powell cut to the layup. Um, yeah, it was good instinctive play. I do think they were hiding him a little bit defensively and offensively. He was spending a lot of time in that short corner.
Mm,
What do you kind of see the Clippers' rotation looking like? Because one thing that I noticed is as soon as he went to the bench, Derek Jones Jr. came back in, and Harden throws him back-to-back alley oops, or two alley oops within like a 3 minute span. And like, I kind of don't want to split up Harden and Derek Jones Jr.
mm.
What are the Clippers' rotations going to look like?
Yeah. I mean, like having two, if you want to call them star players, or two guys who can be the number one player on your offense, does afford you certain liberties in terms of staggering, which Ty Lue has been fond of doing in pretty much throughout his career, going back to Cleveland even. And so, like, yeah, you can afford to, pull Kawhi early and bring him back in with the bench, perhaps. Um, Kawhi works pretty well with Zubats, who's been awesome this year as well, historically, even though James Harden is also as one of the best pocket
Listen,
passers in the league.
everyone works well with Zubats. The it's like the James Harden trade. He'd giving up Zoo for Mike Muscala. The same way the Thunder gave up James Harden for Kevin and Martin. Like they'll go down in history as the two worst trades ever, back to back. We'll argue one or two. It's like the GOAT debate with those two.
Zubats the goat. But yeah, like maybe with the bench you can go to some 5-out units. By bringing Kawhi in with and then playing, Nick Batum and Kawhi in your front court, where you're going up against bench units where they're not necessarily going to be able to punish you for that so much. And obviously having those two who are both very intelligent help defenders can cover up for a lack of rim protection. But then lets Kawhi get space, and then you can keep Zoo and keep Derek Jones, who are the two best defensive players on the team. Compare them with James Harden, who's one of the all-time worst defensive players in NBA history. And so yeah, you keep Zoo with Harden. We can get those pocket passes. He can cover up for his defensive lapses. You get Derek Jones, who you mentioned has formed a really nice chemistry with James, and then Kawhi can maybe work with some bench units with more spacing. He can cover up for maybe a lack of playmaking out of the bench guards for the Clippers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, really, the Clippers have a lot of versatility. Yeah, and when you spoke to the defense, Zoo's decent at they're protecting the rim. Derek Jones Jr. provides nice help side. Chris Dunn, if you put those three out there with Harden and Norman Powell, you've got a good defense to offense balance. You will have some Harden and Kawhi time out there, and then if you have some Kawhi and Norman Powell time, like that is you can stagger those three is kind of my thoughts, and then you rotate other defenders around them, whether it's Batum, Derek Jones, Chris Dunn. Like that team is starting to look scary good. The West is just brutal because as I sit here and say that, I'm like, yeah, they're 20-15. They are half game out of fourth, and they are 2.5 games out of being in the 10th seed. Like,
Yeah.
I'm looking at it like, is Minnesota really going to beat the 10th seed? Are the Kings and Suns not going to do anything or deal anything?
Yeah.
Like, feels like there's a lot to go. But one of the other teams that has made a move and is now currently sitting in the 4th seed as we record this, my Los Angeles Lakers. Now, Dylan, could you say that the Lakers and Clippers this week have both added 3-and-D wings to really help their playoff push?
Exactly. Their moves are basically identical. Bringing in Dorian Finney-Smith is the exact equivalent to bringing in Kawhi. When you account for the Lakers discount that is as the inferior LA team, all their moves are at a lower level. You know, their arena's worse, their front
Oh,
office is worse, and therefore you got to
yeah.
take those discounts into factor. And
Talk
yeah,
to me
Dorian
when your team
Finney-Smith
makes the
is
finals. You don't even have to win one;
Dor-
just make one.
Dorian Finney-Smith is of course the Lakers equivalent of Kawhi Leonard.
It's nice to have the Dorian Finney-Smith out there. I know his first game as a Laker got off to a rough shooting start, but just having a 3-and-D wing, I think that can help
Hmm.
space the floor, and like having someone that knows how to make the right rotations has made Anthony Davis's life already easier. I'm excited. I really want the Lakers to try the two bit or the like huge lineup of LeBron at point, Austin Reeves at
Hmm.
the two, Dorian Finney-Smith and Rui next to Davis. Thus far, they've been going with Max Christie, which I want to
Who's been
say.
good lately?
I want to say it. We did our most improved candidates, and I was like, all right, who are your candidates that played less than 15 minutes last season? And Max Christie was my guy. And you guys were like, oh, that's just homerism. No, Max Christie, he he does the little things well for the Lakers, but I'm really excited about this move. I think it's wasn't too much to give up D'Lo. There will be a time though, probably mid March, where LeBron misses some time, and we'll be like, man, we really could have used D'Lo's scoring here, but you got to give up something to get something.
Yeah. What was your overall evaluation of the trade, considering the asset play and the players involved? You think it's a clear win, a clear upgrade for the Lakers?
I'm a little bit surprised that we had to give up that many picks and still give up D'Lo. Like,
Mm,
I know the Nets don't really want to win games, so I was kind of surprised that we couldn't have figured out something to work with Gabe Vincent's salary. Just like it seems like it was basically a straight salary play where the Nets don't really want D'Lo; they wanted the assets. So I was a little bit surprised at that, but it's the right piece. It's a lower ceiling move as an individual player, but a much better fit move, much better, probably team ceiling raiser, team floor lower as well. Like Dorian Finney-Smith, if LeBron's out for a while, he's not going to help pick up that slack in scoring, in a
mm,
ball handling, shot creation. But if everyone's there, it raises what the Lakers could be capable of.
yeah, and like gives the Lakers a player that they really didn't have, with Jared Vanderbilt's continued inability to stay healthy. Like he was sort of the one guy that they could implement as a real defensive wing.
Hmm.
You know, Rui is not that. Max Christie's been very good as we mentioned, but is on the smaller side. And you know, another guy and like Cam Reddish, who they have had to deploy at certain times, who's at, you know, absolute zero, worse than a zero on offense, who they had to play minutes just to like get someone that can defend some forwards on the floor. And so it's absolutely filling in a immediate need. And it's just going to come down to where Dorian Finney-Smith is as a player. Where when we last saw him on a really competitive team in Dallas, he was hitting his open threes, making the threes in the corner, and was a real positive defensive contributor, and a guy who, talking to your you know, your jumbo lineup of you know, playing the four big guys with Austin Reeves. In Dallas, Dorian Finney-Smith was a guy that was able to guard smaller players,
Hmm.
who was quick enough to guard some guards, which is really the only thing that holds you back from being able to go to that lineup, which probably gets your five best players on the floor. And so he's taken, I think, massive step back. You know, the three is always going to be up and down for a guy like that. I think he's taken a massive step back defensively on the Nets. But as we know, that can always be because he's not playing with a legitimate team, playing with a
Hmm.
team where like the GM is actively trying to lose you games by trading away your only guys that can dribble to make you worse. And so if he's able to find that defensive value that we saw in Dallas and just make open threes, which, you know, LeBron is one of the best players in NBA history at generating good looks for role players. Um,
Hmm.
then yeah, like this could be a guy that makes a big contribution, or he could be washed. This could be what he's capable of defensively.
Nah, not washed. Not washed. I do think. I think maybe asking him to guard some of the smaller point guards, like if he's getting switched on to Ja Morant, he's getting cooked. Like he's not doing that anymore. Lakers still would really like to get Vanderbilt back because he's been kind of that guy that you could have legitimately defend fast point guards and all the way up to maybe not like a Jokic big man, but
he's basically a 1 through 5.
Yeah. So we still need Vanderbilt back. We still may need to make other trades, but to the trade topic, Jimmy Butler has finally formally requested a trade, or not so much, but he at least went to the podium and said that he's not having fun here anymore, and has since been suspended for 7 games, which is
right up until the trade deadline. What a coincidence.
Is that no? That cannot be up to the trade deadline.
No, you're right. There's 7 games, maybe not that long.
No, yeah.
But regardless, right up until when is the trade deadline? Let's have a look.
Like February 12th. It's like a month and a half away. Is that right?
February 6th.
February 6th. Okay, so it is when
1
the
month
pod
away.
drops. This will be January 6th. We're recording it January 5th. Yeah, so 1 month away. Dylan, are there any big Butler destinations that you're seeing or thinking?
I mean, the first thing I want to mention is just like I think Jimmy Butler misunderstands the kind of player that he is at this point. He still thinks that he's a superstar player and is making moves as such. He expects that like he's worth a max contract, and obviously the Heat weren't willing to pay that because he's not worth that, which has caused him to basically check out on the team. I think he's gonna find that looking around the league, there isn't really any team that's going to want to pay him a max contract. We also talk about with great talent comes great tolerance. Jimmy Butler has now proven to like be like a guy that will just check out on your team if he doesn't like where things are, like a total unprofessional. Combined with the fact that like supposedly to some guys in the locker room he's just like kind of annoying. Like a polarizing personality where it's good if you're winning, and then when you're not winning, that like, being a dickhead becomes kind of annoying. And so I think the big problem that you've got now is that coming into his pre-agency, expecting a max contract, the type of team that's going to trade for Jimmy Butler is a team that is basically desperate. And so looking around the league, like which teams are that they are willing to sacrifice long-term contention, because Jimmy Butler is not a top 20 player at this point. Maybe he's a playoff rising, so you can consider him there. He's going to want a big contract, which is going to hurt you. He's going to get worse every year because he's quite old now, and he's going to want an extension. Like no trade is going to go down without him basically pre-negotiating an extension. And so looking around the league, like who are the desperate teams that are willing to sacrifice long-term team quality and flexibility in this new CBA era where everyone's so terrified of the second apron and long-term big money, combined with the fact that like he's a hard fit. Like he's a wing that doesn't shoot, and like is a pretty inefficient scorer, other than the fact that he can draw fouls, which we know doesn't necessarily transfer into playoffs. Increasingly, he really does nothing except get to the line that's efficient. He's a decent playmaker still. He doesn't guard on the ball anymore. And so like the fit is difficult. the salary or the contract situation is difficult, and then the personal factors are difficult, and so I struggle to, if I'm a general manager, justify making a move for this guy, especially if the Heat are going to want positive assets.
Yeah, and that's really where it gets hard to do. I looked through. I was trying to figure out like what three teams are interested in Jimmy.
Hmm.
I think the team that's shown the most interest, that is both supposedly in Butler's a team that Butler wants, and a team that wants Butler, is the Phoenix Suns. And I do think the idea of a Butler for Beal swap actually does kind of make sense for both sides. Beal has a few years left at his mega massive deal.
Yep, one of the worst contracts in the league.
One of the worst contracts in the league. But
until Jimmy Butler's extension, then he surpasses him.
But what I just say is like Beal's ball handling and 3-point shooting next to Bam, it salvages some of like what the Heat have done. I don't think it's gonna I don't think it's gonna make them better. But maybe if Beal's a little bit more locked in, Beal gets the ball in his hands more, we get a better Beal. Right now, I feel like Beal's kind of been neutered in effect. Like he can't play as well without the ball as much. So a Beal for Butler swap. What do you think?
Yeah, like when I mentioned like which team is desperate enough to make the sort of move, given all the implications, the Suns are really at the top of that list because they have gone all in. They are, looking at my standings, the 12 seed.
Yeah.
Like they are all in. They've traded all their future assets. They've, maxed out their salary. They're incredibly expensive. They're a second apron team. And so like that is probably the team that fits best, combined with the fact that we mentioned Butler being a tough fit. Well, Durant and Booker are two guys that can work well with a whole range of different players with their versatility. And so, yeah, I think that is the natural fit. Is it's like a bet that Jimmy can still muster some superstar talent, and hopefully going forward he doesn't fall off too much.
Now, if you're Miami, does that interest you in the least? Like, I can kind of wrap my head around it. It kind of makes some sense to me, but I don't know that I love it if I'm Miami.
Yeah, no, and especially when you consider the fact that like the Miami Heat don't have an average general manager. Like their general manager is Pat Riley. He's not the kind of guy that's like, oh well, I better keep this guy happy. I'll make a move that.
Continue, but then I want to say something on Pat Riley.
All right. To me, he's not the kind of guy that's like, oh well, I'll just make a move to get off this guy, even though it makes the team worse, and I'll take back this negative contract that I don't want, just because it's my only option. Like he seems more of the kind of guy that's like, okay, I didn't find a move that I like, and so you can either play or don't play, which is basically what he's told him to do. Now is like, okay, you don't want to play properly, then you can just fuck off.
All right. I understand that Pat Riley has that air about him, that he's really, in charge and doing things the right way. But are we sure Pat Riley's good? Like, he's been really good at finding guys kind of on the fringes, but also he's heavily overpaid several guys in the past.
Yeah. And also, sorry, carry on.
No.
And also, the reason that they're in this situation is that he hasn't built a good roster around Jimmy and Bam. Like that's why Jimmy wants to leave. Well, I'm sure it's probably more money stuff, but maybe if they were the number one defense and a solid offense, and they were a 4 seed, they'd be more willing to pay up. But yeah, like hasn't built a roster, and so I don't think it's necessarily that he's like such a smart general manager. In the way that we might expect, like some of these other great asset playing general managers to be like, no, this is not the right, this is not the smartest move, and so I'm not going to do it. But he's got like a fuck you attitude where he's like, no, I'm not going to do this. Like, I don't care.
He handles stars well, not well, but he handles them. My second Jimmy Butler trade idea is Jimmy to Memphis. This can be pulled off with a combination of Marcus Smart, Brandon Clark, Luke Kennard's contracts. Maybe you got to figure out some sort of fixes payment. But I do think Jimmy and Memphis could be a really interesting push right now for the team. They've got a lot of guys playing on rookie deals, so they can kind of absorb his huge contract for the next few years without absolutely obliterating their cap space. It's in like cap situation. What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I mean that's probably the other one that makes a lot of sense. Just because they do have tradable contracts, those three guys that you mentioned, like you can move off of those without taking a huge step back in terms of your team quality. And when I was mentioning earlier that the Kawhi returning gives the Clippers like this outside chance of making a sort of a Cinderella run. One of the reasons that you can even start to imagine that situation is a lack of belief in some of these high level playoff teams where the Grizzlies are the 3 seed. And I don't have a huge amount of faith in the Grizzlies as a championship contender. And so if they've got a guy, if Butler can summon that playoff magic that he has been able to at times in the past, then that's the kind of player that can maybe elevate you into another tier.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of wild to think that they could give up 3 bench players. And maybe you don't even start Butler. I know that sounds crazy, but Bane's shooting, Jalen Wells is a really good defender or an off-ball shooter. Like maybe Butler is the captain of this bench squad, and he just shows up and just rips teams to shred. Like, I mean, maybe you start him and you just stagger him, but like, I still believe that there's some really good ball left in Jimmy's career.
Like, do you know anything about Jimmy Butler? Do you think he's gonna come off the bench?
Yeah, fair. There's no chance Jimmy willingly accepts that.
But you can do, like you say, you can do that hard stagger, pull him out early in the first quarter, bring him back in with the bench, and like he would, if he's up to, I mean, he would destroy bench units. Even at his diminished play, where he's scoring 19 points on mediocre efficiency and not really doing much else, his on-off splits remain pretty solid. The team wins minutes when he's in the game, regardless of how unflashily he does it. And so, against bench units, he's basically your point guard. Or he's out there with Scottie Pippen Jr., who's maybe would thrive more as a secondary ball handler. That would certainly destroy bench units.
Well, and I just think about him with the Memphis bigs. Like Jaren Jackson Jr. can space. Santi Aldama can space really well. Well,
yeah.
And then if you got Zach Edey in there, what is your big going to leave Zach Edey? That's an easy he'd dump off and dunk. And Butler getting other teams bigs in foul trouble, and then Edey getting to post up against smaller bigs or the backup bigs. This can cascade in really nice ways for Memphis.
But yeah, and then from the Miami perspective, taking back those 3 bench players that maybe you can move on to someone else if you don't really want them. They are still, even if they're not tremendous value assets, I'm sure someone would still like to have Marcus Smart.
Well, and Memphis is picks positive. They have 2 extra picks that they could move off of to try to make this deal happen. I don't think anyone else is giving them draft capital. So draft capital is not always what it's cracked up to be, but it's something that you can't get from some of these other teams. Or they could include Jake LaRavia, who's had a pretty decent season, and Memphis kind of made the call that they weren't going to extend his rookie deal. So maybe he's looking to go somewhere else. He's got some value and talent. He could be a piece worth having.
And so, yeah, then from a Memphis perspective, it's just okay, this is probably pretty clearly a improvement to our team. Is the opportunity cost too great? As in, is Jimmy the best player that we're ever going to be able to acquire? With this young team, we've got a couple of years to maybe make this sort of move. We've got these assets where we're, in theory, a place that players should want to play. this already very talented young team. Is there going to be a better player come available as the Suns implode? Could they get like Kevin Durant or Devin Booker? If the Philly thing doesn't work out, like could you get Embiid or
if Milwaukee doesn't work out, could Giannis shake free?
Could you exactly?
I don't think they have enough assets to get someone better. I think that's the thing is like they can get Jimmy for a box of spare parts and some picks. You're not getting Giannis for a box of spare parts and some picks. Everyone will line up the young players, the best that they have, to try to get someone better. Do you really want Embiid at this point? Like if Philly doesn't work, it's because Embiid wasn't healthy, and that makes it really scary to trade for him. I do have other Memphis trade ideas because one of the things we decided that we'd do is try to come up with a trade for the top 6 of each of the conferences. And I want to let you know, I came up with trades for 6 teams in each conference. It wasn't, I started at the top, but like Boston, I couldn't figure out a Boston trade. They're in the second apron, the most, so they can't aggregate salaries. So the most they could do is move Jaden Springer and some second round picks. And like, you're not getting anything for Jaden Springer and seconds that's noteworthy. So
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you'd be looking at like some of these lower caliber guys who aren't making a lot. Just looking at my trade candidates list, yeah, I guess matching salary is really the hardest part.
Yeah. I did have a third Jimmy Butler one. I think this is actually a really interesting one. It's going to the Spurs for Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes, and Trey Jones. That works cap-wise. I'm sure they can figure out other guys to make it work. But if you're Miami, you got Keldon Johnson, who is not he's not nothing. He is a playable piece. You get Harrison Barnes, who's going to help you win right now, and Trey Jones is a solid point guard. And then the Spurs now have Chris Paul, Jimmy Butler, Wembanyama. I discussed it with some other friends. They said they need Vassell in the deal. I'm saying if you're the Spurs, you don't put Vassell in. You walk away at that point. But
no way.
If you keep Vassell, you get Butler. Like this team can now compete right now. They can make a deep playoff push right now. And they still have the young guys is growing. Castle's still going to get better. Sohan's going to get better. He's going to learn from Butler maybe. Be like, what do you think about San Antonio getting in the Butler sweepstakes?
Yeah, I mean, you run into a similar sort of problem as with Memphis, where you've got this young rebuilding team, and at some point you're going to be able to make a move. Do you blow your load early and get Jimmy Butler, who's not the most perfect fit, who is on a decline, who is going to expect to be paid, and so it's not like you can, just pivot out of it. Is this guy good enough to go all in on? And when you've got a guy who's a top 10 player in the NBA and is on a rookie contract, you probably can afford to be patient. If we're talking in terms of short-term returns, then certainly, you're 2.5 games. So you're 2 games out of the 6th seed. Like certainly Jimmy Butler is worth 2 games, maybe more. I mean, certainly probably more. And so it does take you into a different tier of contention in the Western Conference. I don't think it makes you a clear championship contender, and also is very detrimental to your team building going forward. And so, yeah, it's like, how much are you valuing short-term success? If Wemby's like, I don't want to miss the playoffs, let's fucking do it, then maybe that's the kind of decision you make and then probably end up regretting, because certainly it would, like I say, give you short-term improvement, but from a long-term team building perspective of successfully and sustainably creating a championship contender in San Antonio again around this generational player, Jimmy Butler is not the caliber of player that I would want to go all in on.
No, but he is the caliber of contract. So if you sell off the different parts, you got Keldon Johnson, Harrison Barnes, Barnes is not going to be a long-term fit there. He's got 2 years left on his deal. Trey Jones, 1 year left. I don't think he's returning. He just seems like his
Yeah,
spot is going to be taken by Castle.
He's out of the rotation, and he played pretty well last year. Like, he is certainly a good player. He's certainly good enough to be a backup point guard, and he's not really playing at the moment. So, like, absolutely, he's the exact kind of guy that would want to get in a new situation.
So at that point, you're adding Butler for basically the cost of Keldon Johnson in this hypothetical scenario. Your pick's positive. They've got a lot of other teams' picks. They got a lot of good swaps from other teams. If you can work out some sort of deal with Butler to keep him longer, it may be a slightly reduced number. I think that gets tradable when you've got as many picks as the Spurs have. So, if he's helpful for this year, helpful for next year, and in 2 years he's not so helpful, I think he could be moved with picks for another guy. Because whatever year it's expiring, whether it expires in 26, 27, expiring contracts plus picks, that usually can get you something and pretty good. I think San Antonio is going to be in that right situation. So I'm just saying I would go for it. I think getting Wemby playoff reps early is only going to be helpful.
Yeah. And then, like, a lot of this might come down to it. Maybe, like, Jimmy will realize this after a while, is, like I said, no trade is going to go down without them pre-negotiating a contract extension. That's his whole, like, reason for behaving the way that he has in Miami, is they obviously don't want to pay him and he wants to be paid. If he comes to the realization that, like, okay, I'm actually not worth $50 million, no one's going to pay me that, but I can opt out and take a lower annual salary, but for more years to maximize my sort of long-term earnings. I can opt out and sign a 3-year, a 4-year, $120 million deal, as opposed to opting into my $50 million player option and then, like, really struggling to find my next contract. Then maybe that's, like, makes it worth it, brings down his negative value on the out years enough for a team like San Antonio to make this sort of move.
Yeah. All right. I think that's enough on Butler. The Heat were the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. So that's where I kind of started my trade searching. Just above them in the East is the Milwaukee Bucks. Would you like to hear the trade that I have designed for the Bucks, or would you like to kind of give me your Bucks thoughts first and then hear if I've made the perfect trade for them?
Bucks are tricky because they are so underperforming where they would want to be. And so I think for the Bucks, marginal improvement is maybe not sufficient. And so the trade is going to need to be a more substantial sort of improvement, like adding a role player isn't going to bring them from 14th in net rating, a 41 win pace, to the level that they want to be at. And so I think they are a team that needs to maybe go a little bit harder. And so, like, what are you thinking?
So I'm thinking that they're going to go for a marginal improvement because they don't really have anything else to do. But I think I found a really nice. I think I found a really nice option for them, and that is you call Portland and you tell Portland, listen, any one of our players on a rookie contract, who do you like? Take your favorite one of them, and in exchange, we want Delano Banton, who played really good earlier this season as a 6'9" point guard, or that defends and was hitting 40%. He's slumped. He's down to 36% from 3. And Duop Reith, who was one of the oldest rookies last year, but he's a stretch big. And you say, hey, listen, these guys are not in your long-term plans. They are on short deals. Banton's a free agent after this year. Duop Reith is next year. Take whichever one of our young players you want to, like, try to build, try to mold, try to develop, and give us back these 2 guys on the fringes of your rotation who will actually be useful for the Bucks, a stretch 5 and a defensive point guard.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is probably the more realistic way to go because, like you mentioned, the Bucks do not necessarily have a lot of assets, but they do actually have some young guys
that have not panned out or developed or done much of anything. But
who
AJ
have,
Green.
yeah, like there are guys who are playing minutes, and like AJ Green, who's a sniper. Is it Andre Jackson that's like starting games for them as well as
Yeah,
like the only guy on the team that can defend a guard. And so like there are playable pieces where if I'm Portland, I've got these kind of veteran guys who are doing nothing for me and aren't worth a whole lot. Like I'd rather turn them into a younger guy that's a similar sort of level of player. Um, and so, like, yeah, those are probably two guys that could play for the Bucks. They've got a really shallow rotation. They've got like five good players, and then it gets pretty rough. And so, just like bringing in two guys that are rotation caliber um, is maybe enough to get something done. Um,
I do want to say I forgot about AJ Green when I made this trade. You can have any of our young players, not AJ Green. Andre Jackson Jr. would hurt, but I was thinking AJ Johnson, and who's the
yeah,
20-year-old rookie that's not gotten any time. And it's
yeah,
just like, hey,
yeah,
do you want a high upside head guy? Will you give us
yeah,
your
yeah.
like?
Do you want a another round repair who they've got on their roster as the sort of rookie scale guy who can't really play,
Listen, you got to take a
but has
lot of
upside?
stabs to try to get one of
Exactly, yeah.
those guys. So maybe throw in a second or something.
Mhm. Um, for them, do you think that this could be? I mean, if you're the Bucks general manager and you've got Giannis on a 4-year deal, you've got Damian Lillard on a 3-year deal, you need to compete for as long as you've got those guys. Would you consider making trying to make a bigger move using Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis as your matching salary and trying to find an undervalued guy like a Zach Levine or a Brandon Ingram whose talent, um, in theory, exceeds their value? Where those are two guys that have been on the trade market, on the trading block quite a lot, and like no one is really that interested in because they are negative assets. Do you try to make a higher um, talent play and just bring in the best guy that you possibly can, even though it's going to be detrimental to you in the long term? Because if you don't maximize your winning window with Giannis and Dame, then you lose them anyway.
So maybe it's just because I've been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3, but I don't know that there's a trade that works for Portis and Lopez. But if you offered some sort of like sacrifice, some sort of cultish sacrifice of just doing away with them to bring back 2020 Chris Middleton, I'm in. Because that's the right piece. That's what you need. You need a defensive wing that can make shots, can kind of create out of the ISO a little bit and hit the open threes. And I don't think that player exists out there. Like
Okay,
giving
well,
up Portis and
maybe
Lope.
you need to take a risk and bet that a guy like Brandon Ingram, who has physical tools and can create a shot, or a guy like Zach Levine, who has physical tools and can create a shot, or Jeremy Grant, who similarly is like
Yeah,
good
yeah. So
size and has some
finish your
offensive
sentence about
ability,
Jeremy Grant.
has good size and some offensive ability, and doesn't have great value because they are overpaid and probably expect a role that exceeds their talent. Like, I think if I'm I think what the Bucks should do is make that sort of play, go all out, do what they can to maximize, just get the most bites at the apple in terms of finding a guy that is going to be able to elevate them to a higher tier. Because being the winning 41 games when you've got Giannis and Dame like is not acceptable.
So I do think they're better than the 41 game pace. Like they start off slow. But they have another problem, which is that they can't aggregate players. They're a second apron team. So,
Oh,
you can give up Brook, but you
mm,
don't have draft picks that you can trade. Like
that
it's
is rough.
really hard
I didn't
to
consider that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so you
So
actually can't combine Lopez and Portis to get a higher salary because they're a
yeah,
second apron team. Mm,
yeah,
brutal.
yeah. Um beyond the Bucks, 'cause we've got 12 teams. We gotta speed this up. Knicks, or sorry, the Magic are next. Is there anyone that you find interesting for the Magic to try to go for?
Yes, D'Angelo Russell.
Really? What are they
Flip
giving up for
him.
Russell?
Nothing. Matching salary. The Magic have found themselves in a situation where they are without a really good point guard. And D'Angelo Russell is the kind of guy who can be a regular season floor raiser, who can maintain some level of play to keep you in a higher sort of standings bracket until we get to the playoffs, where obviously he's going to be a disaster, but in the regular season can elevate you while you're without your other point guards.
I'm so happy you went this route because that's basically the same route I went with my my trade. I want to read you the list of injuries they currently have.
Yeah.
Paolo Banchero, torn oblique. He is out as of the 31st without timetable. Anthony Black is day to day. Gary Harris is out probably until February. Yeah, is what it looks like. Jalen Suggs is out until February, it looks like. Franz Wagner is out, unknown timetable. Mo Wagner is out for the season. So like they're down like 6 starters.
Yeah. There's like your 4 best offensive players are out.
Yeah.
But you're still a really good defense.
So who can just pound the ball and try to generate some offense for you? I think I've got the guy, and he's another former Laker or draft pick. It's Julius Randle.
Oh my God.
Gary Harris and Jonathan Isaac for Julius Randle makes it work cap-wise.
You get the wish Paolo Banchero to replace Paolo until he's back.
Yep. And then you transition Randle to a bench role, which he should have done in
many
Minnesota.
Years ago. Even before that.
And now you've got like a Paolo replacement and someone who can do a facsimile of what he does whenever Paolo comes back. And I think it'll be enough to keep you alive offensively. Harris has been has fallen out of the rotation in large part. Jonathan Isaac's only at 16 minutes a night, despite all of the injuries to his position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like a 16-minute defensive guard.
Yeah. Why Minnesota does this? They really want to move off Randle. Getting Jonathan Isaac keeps the salary spot alive for future trades. Also, Isaac could be a good defensive replacement for whenever Rudy Gobert gets too old and washed.
Exactly.
It's not the greatest. I think you would probably hope for more for Minnesota, but there are not Randle trades out there.
Jonathan Isaac would be a really good fit with Naz Reid as well, where similar to the way that he played with Mo Wagner, which is like you've got this really good offensive center who like sucks on defense. And so you pair him with this really good defensive 4 who can't do anything offensively. And they sort of balance each other out to make 2 competent players. And so like having either Gobert or Jonathan Isaac on the floor gives you like a really high defensive floor. And then Naz Reid is a wonderful fit next to Jonathan Isaac.
And having both Isaac and Rudy Gobert on the floor gives you insane defense and really challenges Anthony Edwards.
Both teams will score 80 points per 100.
80 points. I think you're looking at like a 50-50 game.
Yeah.
Just bringing back the 90s full stop. Ahead of the Magic in the standings, we have the New York Knicks. The Knicks are also in I forget if they're second apron or just first apron, but they're basically fully capped out after the Mikal Bridges trade. But I was still able to find a move that I think you'll enjoy. Can I pitch it to you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Or do you want to try to guess it?
No, I have no idea. Where are we going? Is it Julius Randle?
It is not. It is trading away Jericho Sims, trying to say, hey, listen, Sims is never going to play for Tom Thibodeau. Let's get Tom Thibodeau a guy. He will play. So we're sending Sims to sending Jericho Sims to the Charlotte Hornets for Taj Gibson.
Okay, that is amazing. Did you know that the oldest player on the Knicks is Campaign, who's like 30? Like,
Really?
yeah, like they actually are a team that Sorry, go ahead.
I'm surprised that he's 30, and I'm surprised that he's the oldest player on the team.
Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns is like the second oldest guy on the team.
Weird.
Yeah, and so like this team could maybe actually benefit from getting a little bit older.
It was kind of, it's either Jericho Sims to Charlotte for Taj or Jericho Sims to New Orleans for Daniel Tice. And Tice actually is solid at playing decently well, but I do just think that they want to add a 5 to try to bolster their lineup. I know Mitchell Robinson is in theory coming back, but he's so injury prone that I just don't know that you really trust it.
Yeah. The other move you can do is I'm reading them as not a second apron team right now, and so they can aggregate as long as they don't take back too much additional salary. Mitchell Robinson and Precious get you to 20 million. Could you do like with like Nikola Vucevic as a backup 5?
I don't think you want to have Vu. No, I don't think you want to have Vu and Cat. Like, it's so little defense.
Yeah.
Maybe Clint Capella. I did.
Yeah, more defensive kind of guy.
Yeah. Does the idea of a Clint Capella Nikola Vucevic swap mean anything to you? Does that strike your fancy for either of those teams? So I feel like that's a solid move.
Yeah, why not? Bojan Bogdanovic returned for the Knicks.
No.
Since the last time it turned out so well there.
No, Bojan was rough.
How about let me just check their pick situation, which I think is
it's
still
absolutely
positive.
gone. No.
Oh, it's gone?
After they gave up 5 picks for Mikal Bridges.
That is true.
I think they also have swaps on all their picks, or whatever they do have still has swaps. It's like them and the Suns are just in pick hell.
Yeah. Yeah. They've got yeah, no, they have no trade. They have one tradable pick this year, which is a protected Washington 1 through 10. Like, what are the odds that that's not going to convey? And a Detroit lottery pick, which is probably not great. Yeah, I guess that's rough. So maybe you've got to do like, would like Deuce McBride be considered enough of a positive to get you a a lower level high salary player? Like, could you give Washington their top 10 protected pick back for Kyle Kuzma? Does that do anything for you?
It's top 10 protected. Washington's not going to have the 11th pick. Lottery cannot fall that far.
If Kyle Kuzma keeps winning them games, they need to get off this guy right away.
When picks fly. That's all I really had for the Eastern Conference, because, as I said, Boston, second apron, not a lot that they could do. I do feel like they would like to add another big, just with Kristaps' continued injuries, or add another wing rotation piece. But really, it's Jaden Springer and second round picks that they have to work with.
Yeah,
they could get in on Delano Banton, Duop Reith, but
yeah, the matching salary is probably the hardest part, because it's not like that's like a terrible, sort of asset play. Like, just looking at cheaper guys, like, does that get you to like Devin Carter?
It leaves you $2.5 million short of Malik Beasley.
That's a little rough.
Yeah, which I also don't know how many teams really want to trade with Boston. And right now, it kind of feels like that collection of GMs that were all boys with Danny Ainge have either moved on or are still friends with Danny, but not necessarily with Boston. So,
does it get you like Dario Saric?
Nope, $5 million.
Like, damn, that's wild. That's rough.
Yeah. yeah, it's rough. There's not a lot of options out there. And Cleveland has options. I just don't know that they actually. I don't know that they really want to rock the bed. Is there someone out there that you think is worth moving pieces for if you're Cleveland?
Only if you decided to like go a form of all in and decided to move off Jared Allen, to try to find an upgrade. I guess like on the wing to find a guy who can shoot and defend on the wing. Like, but those guys are so hard to find.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure New Orleans would love Jared Allen, but Kenny Atkinson was the coach in Brooklyn. He has a really nice relationship with Allen, and they're winning. Like, why would you break up a 72 win pace team? Like, it just, I think you need to see him fail in the playoffs before you want to make any changes.
And then you trade one of those 4 guys.
Yeah. I mean, like, the Pelicans have guys that could be available. You could get Brandon Ingram. You could get Zion. But, like, do you want to roll the dice with either of those guys right now? Because I don't.
Yeah, I mean, like, the only way that you would make a move if you're the Cavs is if you're like, okay, this is really great, but it's maybe not sustainable in the playoffs, and we've got this whole that like we don't have any wing defenders, and we've got to go up against a team with the 2 best wings in the conference, and so maybe we need a guy that can defend there who can also score. But those guys are so hard to find.
So Cam Johnson is making $22 million. They could give.
That's a good call.
They could give up Karis LeVert, and other pieces to try to get to that value. I don't really know what else they can do. What's their pick situation like? Yeah, picks, they can't move a pick until 2031. Is a 2031 pick, Karis LeVert, and odd parts enough for Brooklyn? I think they're going to get better offers out there rather than that for Cam Johnson.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that'd be
it is kind of. Yeah. And maybe it's like, I mean, if you're the Nets and you get to the deadline and there's really not that much of a market, is that enough that you just don't try to hold on to the guy?
I'm pretty sure Aaron will single-handedly burn down the Kings arena if they don't offer more than that for Cam Johnson. So
yeah,
I'm just saying the arson may happen. But that's what I got for the top 6 in the East. For the top 6 in the West, it looks like things may have shuffled around a little bit. Oh no, I just didn't do anything for Dallas because they've made so many moves that
they do still have some matching salary.
They do,
they're not a secret apron team, so they're at least a team they could like trade for a decent kind of player if there was an upgrade to be made.
Yeah,
they don't have any picks, which makes it hard.
They could do some of the small moves around the edges. I do think the Delano Banton Duop Reith that I started with, like. Someone should go for those guys. Those are 2 guys that could be useful. Well, even if it's just like as an injury replacement, having a 5 that can stretch, having a guard who can defend and score and catch and shoot threes, like at that lowest salaries, why not? But
could you do like an attempted upgrade on the Maxi Kleber spot and try to get? Well, I guess the problem that you come back to is the assets. Like Isaiah Stewart, who's basically like a better version of what Maxi Kleber is, as like a big who can play both big spots and can shoot, but also play defense. Like they could get to the salary, and then you just like does anyone want Omax Prosper or Jaden Hardy? Yeah,
no, and like. I think Kleber actually has a really useful role. He does a better job guarding wings, kind of the like LeBron style 3-4s, whereas I think Isaiah Stewart does a better job guarding the 4-5s big type. And I wouldn't even make that move if I was them. So I think Dallas is kind of stuck.
Would you do like yeah, fair point. Like Jayshawn Tate is a guy on Houston that I would like for them. Just as like another guy who can defend maybe bigger wings. But then if I'm Houston, like why am I doing that for, Omex Prosper and Dante Exum?
Yeah. The Kings will offer you something better. I feel like the first domino you see will fall will be Cam Johnson. And then anybody that wasn't able to get into Cam Johnson, maybe they make a move for Jayshawn Tate. But Dallas has made a lot of moves. Like Dallas has fed the podcast trade news cycle for a while. It's time we thank them for their service and put them out to pasture.
Yeah. And look, they made the finals last year and then improved their roster in the offseason. So, even though they are the 6th seed at the moment, maybe they don't necessarily need to be making a move.
Yeah. Which brings us to Denver, who is another team kind of in a bit of a cap hell situation, and with major contracts paid out to Jokic, Murray, Gordon, and MPJ. So they can only kind of move around the fringes, and they have one draft pick to trade. But I still think I figured it out.
What can you get for Zeke Naji and a first-round pick?
For Dario Saric and a 2031 first, I have Jordan Hawkins from the Pelicans.
Interesting.
Now, Hawkins has been up and down this year.
Yeah, but the Knicks Kobe, by the way.
I love him. I think this is one of those deals that's like, we need an injection of talent. And for the Pelicans, we kind of need to rebuild. We'd love to have Hawkins as part of that rebuild. We've got so many wings in front of him. We're not giving him time. We're probably keeping Herb. We're probably keeping Trey Murray. Like, he's expandable, and getting a 2031 Nets or 2031 Nuggets pick, I think is going to be super valuable. Like, Jokic in 6 years, is he in the NBA or not? I'm guessing not.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So for the Nuggets, it's a big swing, but he's a young talent that moves off the ball well, can catch and shoot really well, can be kind of a Murray backup for that sort of offensive stylings. And I believe can develop and maybe be a low tier all-star at some point.
I mean, I think it's actually a pretty good fit for Denver for all the reasons that you said. Like, he is a good off-ball mover, and they sort of need guys who can do something with the ball. Jamal Murray's been down this year. Jokic is obviously the best player in the NBA, but like Russell Westbrook, who's figured some things out and is playing well, is like your next best player. And so, like, that's kind of it. Would like a Zeke Naji and a first round pick for Gary Harris do much for you in terms of getting a guy who can maybe shoot but also defend? You think he's washed?
I just don't want to give up more firsts if you're for older players. Like if it's old and potentially washed, that's not worth a first for me. For the Nuggets. If it's young and could potentially develop, that's a first that I'll give up.
Okay. Do you think Denny Avdia is worth more than one first? I guess. What did Portland just get for him? Because he's a good player who's maybe not on their timeline. He would fit well in Denver if you could put Naji and Dario Saric together. What that first round pick, is that enough to get that guy?
It might be. Like, if I'm thinking Portland, I like that asset creation. Let's see. He was traded into the Blazers for Malcolm Brogdon and Bubs Carrington. So they gave up a first and Brogdon to get him.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a 2028 second, a 2029 first, so 2 firsts. Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
although they do.
yeah. Because if you're considering the sunk cost of those assets that they paid to get him, maybe you would expect more from a guy who's like a pretty solid player, like a wing who can do some things with the ball and also defend. Like you'd probably hope for 2 first round picks for that kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I wouldn't do it just yet for them. Although that Nuggets pick could be really valuable. I do
Mm.
not think Jokic is going to play when he's old. I don't actually know how old Jokic will be in.
He's
in
29 now,
2030.
so he's sort of like mid to late 30s.
So 35. I believe Jokic's game will age gracefully should he continue to choose to play. But I just kind of see him as a guy that's going to walk away.
Yeah. He definitely doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's going to like hang around post prime and then like take like these bench roles on like a, try to play with a contender. Like he seems like, okay, I'm not good anymore. I've made hundreds of millions of dollars. I can finally go home and be with my horses.
Yeah. So that was my Nuggets trade. Moving up the standings once more, we have the Lakers trades. And
incredible that the Lakers are a top 4 team right now.
Oh yeah, it's what happens when you get Dorian Finney-Smith. Do you have any Laker trade ideas?
The Lakers are at least in a position where they can still match some salary. Do they have? They've got 1 first round pick they can trade as well, right?
I believe they actually have 2 or 3 if they really want to go for it.
Yeah, and they've got like big money on like kind of dead roster spots, like Gabe Vincent and Vando get you over 20 million. They're a first apron team, so they can still aggregate
salaries,
players. Yeah. And then you've got those first round picks that you can move off of. Like, what is their need at this point? Like some more offensive creation. Are they the fabled Jeremy Grant team? Do we still have that classic D'Lo and Rui for a good player, but now it's Gabe Vincent and Rui plus picks for a good player?
So we do still have that option, and one of the ones that I've seen floating around
Kuzma
online.
Return.
No, that we're good. We're good up front. We have front court players. We don't need more of it. Although one of the trades that I've seen kind of floating around online is giving up several of those picks. I forget if it's 2 or if it's 3 to bring back Colin Sexton and Kessler, Walker Kessler. I don't know why Utah would want this, other than that it's dead Lakers picks. But you could give up Gabe Vincent and Vando plus those picks and bring in that salary fairly easily. That works out. That's doable. I like it as a bench creator, but I'm not sure that Sexton is really that much better than what we just sent out in D'Lo. That like we should give up a bunch of first round picks for him.
Yeah, we should do like those late first round picks where LeBron and AD aren't under contract. Like those are really precarious things for the Lakers to move off of, and so you'd probably want like a clear this makes us a championship contender not only this year but also looking forward, so that we've got an argument to keep LeBron and AD happy. So like looking for maybe like negative contracts where you can like just trade a Gabe Vincent for guys making like similar money but more long term. Are there any guys that fit into that sort of?
Oh, there is.
What do you got?
Gabe Vincent plus the poo-poo platter going to Miami for Duncan Robinson.
Now we're talking.
I think you got to call in Pat Riley and be like, listen, Riles, my guy. What if the Knicks can't take out Boston? Do you really want to have this on your conscience that that Boston could be winning another title? You're not going to win another title, Riles. You got to help us out. You got to pull some of that old Laker magic in there. Have Magic at the meeting, bring in Kareem, and just really relive the glory days and try to talk him into an absolute garbage pile of players for Duncan Robinson, who, might I say, is not like a world beater by anything, but as a movement shooter, as a catch and shoot guy, as a guy that could be a handoff player, like imagine doing a Horn Series action with LeBron and AD. AD sets the screen to free up Robinson. Robinson curls around LeBron looking for the handoff, and then you've got the Davis trail or like coming up to set the second screen in for LeBron. It's a beautiful action. He's a wonderful shooter that I just think would do really nice with the Lakers system. And then you could have the Davis, LeBron, Dorian Finney-Smith, Austin Reeves, and Duncan Robinson out there, and that's a balance. Maybe not balanced, but that team's got some options. That team's got some versatility, and that team can put up shots.
Yeah, like maybe the only downside with that idea is that you've got Dalton Connect, who's maybe a quite a similar kind of player, who you don't really want to play those guys together, and they maybe fill a similar spot in the rotation. But like maybe you could if you are going to trade with Pat Riley, maybe you can kind of try to use his. Actually, I won't go there. Would like a Cole Anthony as one of these sort of like lower level guys who can kind of do something with the ball. If you could do like Gabe Vincent in seconds for Cole Anthony, does that do anything for you?
Yeah, I don't know what that does for Orlando.
Well, like, they
the
don't
Lakers
really
do
play
not
him.
have good. Yeah,
he's like their fourth point guard, and if they do one of these moves that we mentioned as well, where they're bringing in another creator, that makes them even more dispensable.
I guess I don't know that it does enough either way. Cole's fine. He's not really a great shooter. Like the ball handling is going to be an improvement. He'll be a good scorer, a good slasher. But like, am I taking the ball out of LeBron's hands to put it in someone else's? That doesn't seem like a great move for me.
Would you do like Max Christie straight up for Kelly Oubre?
Hell no. Hell no.
Max Christie is the future.
Well, he's a competent wing defender, and he's in the right spots in the rotation. He doesn't always hit his threes, but like I've been very high on him, and Kelly Oubre is not playing as well in Toronto. Like, not going to give up things of value for him.
And I guess it's the same for like like Gary Payton or Luke Kennard or Gary Harris. What about Buddy Hield? Would you do him straight up for Buddy Hield?
I mean, like if we could get Buddy Hield, yeah, that'd be great to have that type of shooting presence. I don't see anybody outside of Pat Riley who we might be able to convince to help the hometown team out a little bit doing anything. I mean, maybe the fact that we have LeBron and he's still a little bit bitter is going to hurt us in that regard. Yeah. But
maybe you can hack Pat Riley's house so that whenever he turns on the TV, it just plays Winning Time and he gets nostalgic.
Yeah. Just trying to think of something. That's about the best I think we can hope for. there may be a Rui trade out there where the Lakers say, hey, we want to start Dorian Finney-Smith. Rui doesn't want to go to the bench. So what's a Rui option? But we're running little long. So Memphis as the 3 seed, I think they're the prime option for Cam Johnson. They can give up Smart, Jake LaRavia, and then 2 first-round picks. They can give up more, but I think 2 firsts and Jake is more than they're going to get, more than Brooklyn's going to be offered by any other team from what I'm kind of sussing out from the market and seeing what teams have available.
Yep, I like it. It's good fit, good asset play. Phone it in.
Yeah.
Houston.
Houston.
Another team with good young players, plenty of matching salary, picks to move. They are the 2 seed, but they're also young, so you could go either way in terms of maybe a more long-term play or a more short-term buy-in. What did you have for Houston?
So for Houston, I have Aaron's dream scenario, which is De'Aaron Fox for Fred VanVleet, Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore, 2 first-round picks. But that is way too much salary. Fred VanVleet alone is $43 million compared to Fox's is 35. Once you add Reed's $10 million, like you're up to 52. Well, Reed's 10, Cam Whitmore's 3. You're up to 53 million. So the Rockets are also going to get Malik Monk back in this deal because Monk and Fox are boys, and that's why he came to Sacramento. I think he'd be happy to be traded with Fox. And now Houston has really competent guard play of Fox, Monk, and Green. That's a lot of offense, not a lot of defense there, but they've kept intact their defensive trio of wings and still have Şengün.
Yeah,
I don't know that they're a title contender, but that's a scary cluster.
Yeah, and let's be real as well. Like, those guys that you were sending out, while Fred VanVleet is I think one of the more underrated players in the league and a positive defensive player. Like they're not the reason that Houston is a good defensive team. The main reason that Houston are a good defensive team is, like you mentioned, their wings, but also Ime Udoka, and he's not going anywhere. And so, like, I'm sure Ime Udoka can build a good defense around De'Aaron Fox. And this is like my favorite theoretical trade. I think the fit is so perfect in terms of both play style and also, like, it's one of those rare ones where the ages actually kind of match up. And so, the only thing that you could see as a negative for this is like if I'm Sacramento, if I trade off of Fox, am I really going anywhere if I don't get back a player as good as him? And so, like, I don't want to be in this awkward stage where I'm rebuilding, but I've also got Domantas Sabonis and DeMar DeRozan. So, like, maybe I want Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet, and like you can have Kevin Huerter as maybe the counter. Where I think now you get into it's a clear positive maybe for both teams.
See, I think the idea is the Kings don't want to bottom out again. They still want to have a competent enough team. And with VanVleet, it's Sabonis and DeMar, you will be competent. You may not make the playoffs, but like that should be good enough for 500. That would make the playoffs in the East. That would be like the 7th seed in the East.
Could you make that trade and then relocate your team to be the second Chicago team?
Sure. That will absolutely crush Aaron, although I believe his grandmother lives in Chicago, so maybe he can just move to the Midwest.
He can go with them.
But like the real play is, hey, can we get Reed Shepherd? It's kind of the inverse of what they did when they got Sabonis, giving up.
They make up for that sin.
Yeah, which
throwing good money after bad.
To be fair, Reed Shepherd I was super high on after the draft, after Summer League. Has not shown it this year.
Yeah.
Which part of that is the depth of Houston. So I'm not fully out on him, but if Houston did this trade, this could be selling at either the highest point of his career or the lowest point of his career. Because if he's not getting minutes next year, you're not going to get this kind of return. Like that is the big reason the Kings would do this trade, is to get Shepherd. And if he takes off, then you've sold incredibly low. So I think for that reason, I would be hesitant to pull the trigger on this if I'm Houston. Like, kind of want to know what asset I'm trading, but it's in the ether. It's been talked about a lot, so it it would feel amiss to not bring it up and discuss it on the pod.
Mm. And I like it. Like, it's one of those ones where I actually think it makes sense and would like to see it.
Yeah. Final team in the West, or the top team in the West, the Thunder.
Mm.
I have just a small trade here for them
Mhm.
because they've given Aaron Wiggins a decent chunk of change. He is tradable for a backup center. I had him going to Chicago for Jalen Smith. We know they've had trade talks with the Bulls recently, moving Wiggin or moving Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso. Maybe the phone lines are still a little hot here. A stretch big, Jalen Smith, another Jalen to add to the rotation. Just think that it would make some sense. It would move out some duplicitous pieces for a piece that could be helpful, provided we don't fully know Chet's return status.
I love duplication when it's big wings. I don't want to, big wings you can
He's not
always
that
make work.
big.
You can play. He's a wing, okay. You can play multiple wings together. A 6'6" guy who can defend, like you can put him out with anyone. And didn't you see he single handedly won them a game? Like, I don't think Jalen Smith is going to do that for you. I'd be more inclined to move some of like these lower end guys who make a bit of money, like Usman Jang and like Kenrich Williams get you over $11 million. Like, is there an $11 million player who can play? Like, I'm sure you can find someone.
So they're never moving Kendrick Williams.
Yeah.
He is this team's version of Nick Collison, and like they've talked about it. The Thunder management have talked about like how Nick Collison meant so much to the franchise and was there forever, and have like directly called him this team's version of Nick Collison. So like,
Yep. Jersey retired before Kevin Durant, of course.
yeah. How much is Usman Jang making? Because maybe they could still do Jang for
Jang makes $5 million.
He's at 5. I mean, you could toss in like Dylan Jones, and that's probably still enough to get the Jalen Smith the contract together. I'm just thinking like it's a decent fit, and he's still young. He's still in the time in frame. He's just kind of balanced out the roster a little bit more.
Yeah. Can you get to without trading any of those guys? Can you get to the 11 million to bring in Larry Nance, who's I think is like a perfect Thunder kind of player?
Not really.
Like this sort of rangy center who's absolutely bombing his threes and can play defense. Like I guess the only way you get there is you've got to either move Cason Wallace, Isaiah Joe, or Nikola Topic, who you probably don't want to do.
Yeah, I don't want to move off of any of those guys. Like Wiggins in my mind is the most the player that I would be least aggrieved to move off of in that $10 million range. And I don't know that I would do Larry Nance Jr. either, just because of the kind of age. What is he, 33 now? So, you know, the idea with Smith was at least you're getting a young guy, and you're getting a guy that's could be part of the growing rotation. He is going to be a little bit duplicitous of your big Jalen Williams, but he is bigger and a little bit more developed.
Just
any other
for other
trade
lower salary guys?
There is one other lower salary guy that I wanted to discuss because I'm not sure what's going on. Did you notice someone?
No, who's that?
So it's not for Thunder. I don't think he would be a good fit for the Thunder. But Cam Thomas is currently making $4 million a year, and Brooklyn has seemed like hesitant to offer him an extension or kind of make the future for him. could Cam Thomas be like a really good bench scorer for a number of teams? Like Jaden Springer for Cam Thomas works to capitalize.
Yeah. Especially with Brooklyn's seeming strategy of losing by just trading away every guy that can dribble, putting out a team that cannot cross half court under any sort of attempt at press. And so, like, for a team like the Thunder who have maybe a lack of matching salary but do have assets that they can move, that could be an interesting sort of play. How about your Lakers? No interest in Cam Thomas for the Lakers?
It's once again the same thing of like, hey, we're taking the ball out of LeBron's hand. I don't know. I'm giving up those far out draft picks, but if they want some seconds, like sure. I would personally value Cam Thomas more than what I think Brooklyn is valuing him. Like I would want something good, but if you could give up a couple of picks, like maybe like an unprotected first and then a marginally protected first, or like a first and a bunch of seconds, or a first and another young piece. Like Cam Thomas is only 23. I don't know why Brooklyn hasn't made more of a effort to kind of bring him into the fold. Just seems like he could be a really useful piece for them moving forward, and a young piece moving forwards. Be someone that I want to have in the rotation somewhat long term. I know he doesn't really pass. I know he is not the most efficient. I've been doing a LeBron series and like talked about Larry Hughes and how he was like 22 points per game, and then when he got to LeBron's team, he was not as good, and it's because he was an inefficient scorer on a bad team. I don't think that you should try to build your like a title team around Cam, but at $4 million for a bench spark plug scorer, or like I think a lot of teams could do worse. And if Brooklyn's open to negotiations, I'd give him a call.
Yeah, I mean, if like the league is down on Cam Thomas, where he's perceived as sort of a phony kind of player, and you can get him without a huge asset return, for a team that needs some bench scoring, like you can't really do better than that for $4 million.
Yeah, I mean, Bones Highland and a 2031 Clippers first. Does that get you Cam Thomas?
I mean, those 20, just like those Lakers out picks, post Kawhi Leonard, post James Harden, the Clippers, like could be a pretty rough team.
Maybe if you're Orlando and you're saying, hey, we need someone.
Wouldn't it be funny if like
pound the ball and get something like?
Yeah. Wouldn't it be funny if it turns out that the Nets are like such a bullshit team, that like you trade Bones to them and then he's putting up like the exact same numbers as Cam Thomas? It's like, oh, you want an inefficient guy who can just like pound the ball. Like Bones could be that as well.
It could be. I think Cam's shown enough, and like now he's hitting decent chunk of his threes, 37.5%. Like, hey, I would sniff around it if I was especially one of those teams that is in kind of a cap hell situation. Denver.
Yeah, getting
can give up I don't know they do it, but
getting cheap contributors in this, modern this postmodern CBA world that we live in, is an important part to putting together a championship contender.
Now,
and like
he is only cheap for a year. Because at the end of this year as a free agent, and I would just assume that someone will give him more money than $4 million, and like that's why I'm kind of surprised that he hasn't gotten it from Brooklyn, or they haven't figured out some sort of extension. But like if you're the Knicks and you wanted to add a bench guard, you can get to $4 million, and off of Jericho Sims and Cam Payne and They don't really have any. They got a bunch of seconds. They can throw a ton of seconds at them, and they still have the Washington and Detroit picks, which actually the Detroit one might actually be a first rounder this year. It's top 13 protected. So I don't know. It's just an idea that I'd personally sniff around.
Yeah. Especially like I say, to get like a guy that can play basketball but makes so little amount this season.
Yeah. All right, Dylan. Any other trade ideas or thoughts?
No. We're good.
Cool. Let's get out of here. Where
Let's
can
do it.
where can the people find you?
Search in the thrift stores for I Heart Hot Mom t-shirts.
Find me Nate_Hoops Temple on TikTok and YouTube.
And his I Heart Hot Mom t-shirts. For those who listen video only, that's I don't think we mentioned it, but Nate's wearing a t-shirt that says I Heart Hot Moms.
I think we've now mentioned it quite a few times.
Just to be clear, you can find Nate wearing his I Heart Hot Moms t-shirt.
It was a great thrift store find back when I was in college. Great way to kind of tease one of my buddies. The wife and I went through our closet and trying to clear it out, make space. And I found it in the deep back, and I put it on and like waited for her to notice, which it took her a good like 15 minutes of us in a like walk-in closet organizing things before she noticed that I was wearing an I Heart Hot Mom shirt. Like I took a snap and sent it out to all of our friends and like that we have a group chat in of me, and I was like, let's see how long it takes Rebecca to notice this. and my friend Hannah was like, yeah, just remove the S, be like I heart like a hot mom, since we have a kid now. But I was like, good save, Hannah. Good, thank you for that. But yeah, you find me Nate_Hoops Temple on TikTok and YouTube. You can email the show at hoopstemple@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks for listening.